I don't remember when he carried me to his bed, when the world blurred into nothing but his weight pressing me down, but I remember the sound of my own moans slipping out against the rough rhythm of his breath. Heavy and hungry, as though every gasp of mine was the only thing keeping him alive, and when he bent close, his voice a growl against my ear, he whispered, "I love when you moan my name," words cruel and tender in the same breath, a taunt wrapped in possession. And when he pushed into me, inch by inch with a merciless slowness that made my body tremble, he held me there, hovering at the edge of pain and pleasure, his gaze fixed on my face as he murmured, "I'm going to move. What do you want?" And though shame burned in my chest, though every thought screamed that I should stop, the words that left my mouth betrayed everything, breaking out in a whisper I didn't recognize as mine, "Just make me cry. My name is Celine, and for a long time I thought I had everything I wanted. My fiancé, Daniel, was the kind of man every woman dreamed of, charming, steady, the safe place I had always longed for. The man who kissed me awake in the mornings with promises of forever and pressed his hand into mine in the dark like he could anchor me to the future we were building. And for a time I believed him, believed in us, believed that happiness could be that simple. But nothing in my life was ever truly simple, not with Adrian, Daniel's older brother, always there in the background, tall and quiet, the one whose sharp eyes lingered too long, whose silence filled the air heavier than words ever could, the one I never should have noticed, but always did. Adrian unnerved me from the first moment, the way his gaze seemed to strip me bare, the way he spoke so little, but somehow made me feel as if he already knew all my secrets, and though I told myself it was only nerves, that I was imagining it, I caught myself thinking about him when I shouldn't, caught myself feeling heat in my chest when his hand brushed mine in passing, and I hated it, hated the way my body betrayed me even as Daniel's arms wrapped around me and his lips whispered love into my skin. For a while I clung to the illusion, but shadows have a way of creeping in, and I began to notice the cracks, Daniel's late nights that stretched too long, the sudden distance in his smile, the hushed conversations that ended when I entered the room, and though my heart twisted with suspicion, I silenced it, convincing myself trust was stronger than doubt, until the night I woke to a soft knock at my door, opened it to find the hallway empty, and looked down to see a white envelope resting against the frame with my name scrawled across it in a hand I didn't know. Inside, only 6 words written like a wound, "You don't know who he really is." The letter haunted me, but I tried to pretend it meant nothing, slipping it into a drawer and burying it beneath the velvet box that held my engagement ring, yet no matter how I tried to silence it, the words echoed in my chest until the day I found the truth for myself. Daniel's phone lit up on the counter while he showered, the glow pulling me closer against every instinct, and with one glance I saw her, smiling in candlelight, writing words to him that I thought belonged only to me, words of love, of longing, and in that instant the air left my lungs, because I could not deny what I was seeing, not when her face was captured in photos that should have been ours, not when his replies mirrored the same vows he had once whispered into my hair. When I confronted him, trembling, voice breaking on the only question I could manage, "Who is she?" He didn't even try to lie, didn't soften, didn't hesitate. He just looked at me with something cold in his eyes and said, "You're not enough anymore," and the cruelty of those words cut deeper than the betrayal itself, because they were not spoken in anger but in certainty, like a truth he had carried for months, and as I stood there unraveling, the sound of a glass shattering in my chest, I felt a presence behind me and turned to find Adrian watching from the doorway, silent as ever, his gaze fixed on me with something that was not pity but hunger, something that made my skin burn even through the salt of my tears. And when Daniel walked past us without looking back, Adrian stepped closer, his voice low and steady as though he had been waiting for this moment. "I warned you," he said, and my breath caught because I realized he had known all along, and when his hand brushed mine, not in comfort but in claim, I should have pulled away, I should have screamed, but instead I stood there, trembling, caught between grief and a fire that terrified me, and later, when the night grew too heavy and I found myself in his room, his body pressed against mine as if to burn the betrayal out of me, I knew I had crossed into something darker. Something irreversible, because the brother I had once feared was no longer waiting in the shadows. He was inside my life, inside me, and he had no intention of letting go. Then his hands were on me, pulling me inside, shutting the world out with a slam that felt like finality. His body pressed me back against the wall, hard enough to steal my breath, his hand gripping my waist as though he had every right, and, before I could speak, his mouth was on mine, fierce and consuming, tasting my tears like he had been starving for them, his kiss not gentle but demanding, his tongue claiming, his teeth grazing until I gasped into him, and he broke the sound with a low whisper against my ear, "I love when you moan my name." His shirt was gone before I realized my hands had pushed it away, my fingers trembling over the hard planes of muscle I had once tried not to see, and when he carried me to his bed, laying me down like a conquest rather than a comfort, I thought I might shatter from the force of everything I was feeling: rage, grief, desire, all burning into one, until he entered me slowly, cruelly, inch by inch, watching the twist of my face as though it was the sight he had been craving, his breath ragged against my throat as he hovered there, not moving, just holding me pinned beneath him, whispering in a voice that shook through me, "I'm going to move. What do you want?" And though shame scalded me, though my heart still ached with betrayal, the words left me raw and broken. My voice nothing but a trembling plea, "Just make me cry." His answering growl rumbled against my skin, and then he thrust into me with a force that tore the last of my restraint away, each movement relentless, dragging sobs and moans from my lips until I didn't know whether I was weeping from grief or pleasure. Only that Adrian was inside every part of me now, filling the hollow Daniel had left, and in his cruelty there was a strange kind of salvation, as though he would not let me forget the pain but burn it into something darker, something ours. When it was over, I lay there in his bed with my body trembling, my chest rising and falling as though I had run for miles. But Adrian wasn't like Daniel. He didn't turn away. He didn't soften into warmth. He stayed propped above me, his hand firm against my hip like a brand, his gaze locked on my face with an intensity that pinned me more than his weight had, and when I turned my head to hide from it, he caught my chin between his fingers and forced my eyes back to his voice low and unyielding as he whispered, "Don't you dare look away. You belong to me now." The words cut through me, harsh and possessive, yet my body betrayed me again, heat rushing into my cheeks, my lips parting with a breathless sound I couldn't swallow, and his mouth curved into something dark, almost cruel, as if he had seen everything I was trying to deny. I should have pushed him away, I should have run, but when he drew me against his chest, his heartbeat pounding like thunder, I clung to him instead, and the shame of it only sank deeper. That night became the line I could never uncross. Because the next morning when I returned to Daniel, pretending nothing had happened, I could still feel Adrian's breath on my skin, his voice echoing inside me, and worse, I carried the knowledge that he was watching, always watching, and that he would never let me forget what we had done. I told myself that night with Adrian was a mistake, that grief had blurred my judgment and loneliness had driven me into the arms of the one man I should never have touched. But the mistake did not end there, because Adrian would not allow it to. He began to appear everywhere, not in open pursuit, but in shadows that tightened around my life. A single red rose placed on my pillow when I returned home from errands. A folded note slipped into my coat pocket with handwriting that was not mine. And the words written inside, sharp and deliberate, "In the fear of losing you, he lost you. In the fear of never having you, I made sure I'd never lose you." My chest tightened each time I read them, torn between terror and the warmth that came from being wanted so completely. Nights became worse. I would dream of his breath at my ear, his weight pressing me into the mattress, his voice whispering my name like a vow and a threat at once. When I woke, the line between dream and reality blurred, my curtains left open though I swore I had drawn them, the journal on my bedside table moved an inch to the left, pages turned as if someone had read them. Then one night, I found a line written in it, not in my hand but in his. "You were mine before you knew it." I tried to confront him, to demand answers, but when I finally whispered, "How long?" he only leaned close, his lips brushing the shell of my ear as he breathed, "From the first night you stepped into this house." I've never let you out of my sight. My body trembled, not just from fear, but from the dangerous truth I could no longer deny. Adrian's obsession had begun long before Daniel's betrayal, long before I belonged to anyone. And now it had wrapped itself around me so tightly that escape no longer felt possible. Daniel returned as if nothing had happened, his voice dripping with apologies I no longer believed, his promises already broken before they left his lips. I should have felt pity, but all I felt was the weight of Adrian standing behind me, silent, his presence filling the room with something sharper than fear. When Daniel reached for me, Adrian stepped forward, his hand slamming Daniel back against the wall with a force that made the picture frames rattle. And then the truth spilled, not from my mouth, but from Adrian's phone, recordings of Daniel's laughter as he mocked me, photographs of him in another woman's arms, messages written in the same words he once whispered into my skin. Daniel paled, stammering, denying, but Adrian's voice cut through him like a blade. You thought you could betray her and walk away. You thought I would let you. You were wrong. What followed was not a fight but an unraveling. Adrian tore Daniel down piece by piece, sending the evidence to his employer, exposing his affair to every friend, stripping him of his pride until nothing remained but shame. I watched the man I once loved collapse under the weight of his own ruin, and in the silence that followed, Adrian turned to me. His hands were still trembling with fury, but his voice was low, steady, final. It's over. He can't touch you. He can't touch us. I should have run, should have screamed, should have hated him for the monster he had become, but when his arms closed around me, holding me with a strength that promised both protection and possession, my body betrayed me once more. The truth was undeniable now. Daniel was gone, destroyed, and Adrian remained. He had burned my world to ash, and yet he was the only one left standing in it with me. And as his lips brushed the top of my head, his whisper sealing the fate I could no longer escape, "You belong to me, Celine. Always." I knew that no matter how deep the fire burned, I would stay, because Adrian had made sure there was nowhere else for me to go.